Hey, welcome into the Stinkin Truth podcast. Mark Schlereth alongside my host, or co-host, Mike Evans. And we just appreciate you guys watching, appreciate you downloading, liking, and subscribing, doing all those things. So anyhow, Mike, how are you, buddy?
Do you know it's T-minus 1 week to the start of the NFL draft?
I know here in Denver we have not paid attention to it at all.
Right? It's
been
weird.
Yeah, it has. Well, I mean, we gave away all our first rounders to Seattle for Russell Wilson. So far, it looks like that's not working out really well for
Seattle?
us.
You guys excited about the draft? What are you going to do with our picks?
Yeah, I'm sure they're just, head over heels excited about the draft right now.
I bet you they are.
We had so many picks.
Do you get excited about the draft?
No.
I know that for you, you were, a 12th round draft pick out of Idaho.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't have been drafted if the draft was today.
Okay, first off, you're doing this just to irritate me, and we're not playing the O'Reilly game right now. But
I'm just trying to irritate you.
I know. I was a 10th rounder out of Idaho, but theoretically, I would have been like the Mr. Irrelevant pick, because back then there were 28 teams, so I was pick number 263. Mr. Irrelevant's usually in like the 270s. I think.
Yeah.
So, boom.
You'd have been a great Mr. Irrelevant. You'd have embraced it.
Oh, sure.
Showed up at the parades, Grand Marshal. You would have worn that title proudly.
Absolutely, I would have.
Why do you think the draft is why has the draft become such a big deal? You spent a lot of years at ESPN. You were part of coverage and everything like that. Do you have a theory as to why it has become the monster event that it has?
No, I mean, one, we all like hope, right? It sells hope. So you think that through the draft with a player or two, I can completely overhaul my franchise, which, theoretically, when you look at what the Bengals have done, for instance. Now, they'll point to Joe Burrow, and Joe Burrow is flat out incredible. They also, drafted T. Higgins in the second round. They also drafted Jamar Chase in the first round. Like, they have hit on multiple high-round draft choices. And, oh, by the way, in doing that, before Joe Burrow got there, they invested in their defense, not only through the draft, but through free agency. So, if you do it correctly and you're not chasing picks, the problem with teams is teams try to, they address an area of their franchise that's missing, something that they don't have, something that they lack. And they address that area through the draft. And they invest in that area. And if they don't develop that area, and if that guy that they draft or those guys that they draft don't develop, you know what they do again the next year? Attack that same area. And they do it over and over again. And then you know what they're doing when they're attacking that area, or they're attacking that particular position, and they don't succeed? A position of strength over the course of 2 or 3 years becomes a position of weakness, because they don't address depth. They don't address development. So, for instance, you can have a really strong offensive line, let's say, for instance, just for a lack of a better group, right? And you can't pick out a wide receiver. You just can't, for all the stands, all the Lamar Jackson stands out there. We just don't ever have any wide receivers. And, well, you've addressed it, and for whatever reason, it hasn't worked. You haven't developed it. It's hard to be excited about playing wide receiver when you don't see the ball, or there's not a lot of action for you. You're asking those guys to block all the time. So, you keep addressing it, and then this position of strength, which is this offensive line, eventually one guy leaves in free agency, another guy gets hurt, another guy leaves in free agency, and then that position of strength becomes a position of weakness because you haven't drafted well at that position because you've been chasing another position.
Makes sense.
And that's what ends up happening to teams. So if you draft really well, and drafting is just a small part of it. It's not just the draft. Now you got to develop really well. And the Bengals have done a phenomenal, I'll tip my cap to the Bengals. They've done a phenomenal job at not only drafting the right guys, but developing those guys. And I don't think enough gets made in the development phase of the NFL. because you just think that you draft a guy and he's instantly going to become great. And I've seen a lot of guys who had the potential of being really good players that just never worked out. And
how is that? We've got the best of the best coaching on the planet.
Well, I would disagree with that, but
in theory.
Well, yeah, in theory, but there's a lot of crappy coaches in the NFL too. Oh, yeah.
Like, put a percentage on it.
Well, I mean, there's a ton of coaches that.
Like, all right, for example, your area of expertise, offensive line.
Okay.
You got 32 offensive line coaches out there in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
How many would you say are good?
I would say there's probably, let's like players. There's a handful of exceptional guys, and then there's a bunch of good guys, and then there's, if you divvy it up in a third of them are really good coaches, a third of them are average, and a third of them suck. I mean, think about, like, here, I'll just give you some perspective. All right. You know how many times I've been told to stay low?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Hey, what you got to do here is you got to stay low, right? You got to have leverage.
Well, you do have to stay low.
Right. You have to stay low. You got to have got to stay low, deliver the bow, then read and go. That's, I mean, you get, but I like, hey, listen, you got to stay lower. Hey, no shit, Sherlock. Why? Because I'm getting impaled, right? I'm getting driven on the back. So think about this. Think about from the perspective. And this is where coaching lacks in the National Football League. It's nuance. Everything is nuance. And everything is technique. So if you and I are both about the same size, we're both 6'3", 6'4". You're a D lineman, I'm an offensive lineman. And we're going to hit each other, right? And I'm trying to create a running lane. I'm trying to drive you off the ball, and you're trying to hold me up and not get driven off the ball, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to come off the ball a foot lower than you. We are going to hit helmet to helmet, right? We're going to hit like this. So we're going to smack each other right here. The key is, do I have the proper technique to hit at the same level and then create this? So when I get under you, right, it's not because I came off 12 inches lower than you. That's physically impossible. It's that we hit helmet to helmet, and I created this. And when I create this upward motion, you know what ends up happening? Is I take your inertia and I send it through the top of the stadium. Right. And now I have the leverage. That comes from footwork, from hand placement. One thing you have to understand is that working, like, to create leverage is not just coming off the ball. Leverage is really created by more up than out. So you want to be able to strike a guy up and lift him through the roof. And that's where leverage is created, and that is all 100% technique. You've got to have great technique to be able to move a man from point A to point B against his will.
And a third of the NFL coaches can't do it. And we're just talking offensive line, but we could be talking about any offense. We could talk about any position on the team.
Yeah, hey, you got to stay lower here. Hey, you got to get off press. Really, how?
Yeah, right.
Really, like how?
Yeah,
Sherlock.
I didn't know it was that bad. Okay.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes. That's why players in any sport. That's why players talk to players. Dude, I'm having I don't understand this. I'm having a tough time with this. Let me tell you how to circumvent this. Okay, here's what they're saying, but this is what you got to actually do. Mm-hmm. That happens on a consistent basis.
That explains why those player summits have become so popular in the offseason.
Absolutely.
Offensive line summits, pass rushing summits, those kind of things where these players get together and just exchange ideas that maybe they're not getting at the team they're with.
Again, it always comes down to the nuance of playing. The nuance of, hey man, everybody knows that this is the blocking scheme or whatever, right? And it's coached a certain way. But how do you get a guy to play? Like I always tell people, listen, like you're consulting with the team, and you say every defensive lineman are taught how to defeat blocking, combinations or a block, how to defeat a reach block, how to defeat a cutoff block, how to defeat a double team, right? How to defeat an ace block or a full block, or how to defeat a trap. How to like every so you're coached on defeating this individual block. As an offense, I'm trying to get you not to play an individual block, but to play a scheme. So, for instance, if we're running a bunch of cutoff blocks, like we're running a zone handoff, a tight zone handoff to the left-hand side, I want my footwork to be impeccable. I want everything to be impeccable, right? I want it all come off and look exactly the same every time. And what I want you to do as a defensive lineman is say, man, I got to defeat that cutoff block. I got to defeat that cutoff block. I got to squeeze it. I got to squeeze it. I got to squeeze it. I got to stay. Hey, man, I'm a B gap defender, but I've got to squeeze that B gap and push you further into the A gap, right? I got to squeeze that. And then, you know what I end up doing? Then we run power the opposite way. And I use the exact same technique, the exact same feel, the exact same footwork. Everything's exactly the same. So that you as a defensive lineman go, there's another cutoff block. I got to defeat the cutoff. I got to squeeze it. Then we wheel on your ass, and you're 3 gaps out of where you should be because you're playing the scheme. You're not playing the individual block. You can't read the difference. And so there's that little bit of nuance that comes with it that, frankly, doesn't happen a lot with a lot of coaches. It's unless you've done it. Now I'm going to get
Well, I hope you never give up this media game, but if you ever did, I think you could be a pretty good offensive line coach, but you'd have to take an enormous pay cut. So a lot of coaching, a lot of technique. It still comes down to the physicality, the violence of the game. And, boy, we saw that on display last year with Tua Tagovailoa and the concussions. And he came out and admitted recently that he thought about retiring and that he had to learn how to fall. Were you surprised by that admission?
No, I think that everybody looks at their own career, and we always talked as players. It's not about if, it's when. There's 100% likelihood that you will be injured if you play professional football. It's just, if you play football at any level, you're going to get injured. That's just, it's 100% guarantee that you'll get hurt. And you have to be able to come to grips with that. And, some are obviously far more severe than others. And you have to look at that and say, is it worth it? Is, a lifetime of, say, injury or a lifetime of pain, is it worth, is CTE and potential, head trauma and potential brain damage, is it worth playing this game that I love? And I think everybody looks at it, and every guy is different. I think the majority, I'm talking 98% of guys weigh it out and they say it's worth it to me. Yeah. And I think it's smart to kind of step back and look at it. And, Tua's a first rounder, so he's made a lot of money. But to step back and look at it and go, okay, am I okay? Like, is my family okay with this? Am I okay with this? And there's been a few guys that have stepped away very early in their careers because of injury issues or head trauma issues and all those things. But the majority of guys, and I'm talking the high 90 percentile, are like, it's worth it to me. And so I appreciate you looking at it that way. But, people ask me all the time, because as you know, I've 29 surgeries over the course of my playing career. Ask me all the time, if you had to do it all over again, would you do it? Absolutely. I wouldn't even hesitate, without question.
Yeah.
Without question. And because that's, for me, the life blood coursing through my veins. It's what I've done. It's what I wanted to do. It's I got to live out a childhood dream. with that takes some sacrifice. You got to be willing. You got to be willing to put up with the shit, just like you're willing to put up with the good stuff, right?
I think I speak for everybody out there as a football fan, never mind Dolphin fan out there who is really, really curious to see what happens with Tua. But I like him. I loved watching him play at Alabama. I like the way he carries himself. Mm-hmm. He clearly takes being a leader as being very important. Boy, he was playing lights out. You think about it. If you take out the time missed, he played 13 games, and he still threw for over 3,500 yards and 25 touchdowns. And that was a fun offense to watch, the Mike McDaniel offense, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill.
Right. Gesicki.
That's a fun offense to watch, and he's really good in it. It's all based on ball comes out quickly, good decision-making, accuracy. He doesn't have a hose for an arm, but it's good enough. But I root for him because he's fun to watch.
Yeah, he took some shots, man. It was and probably the mismanagement of all that stuff, going right back in the following week or whatever it was, 2 weeks later. I don't remember exactly the timeline of that, but it definitely brought some questions to the forefront about, NFL care and how much time is enough time and when should you be cleared to go back and rightfully so, the NFL was really scrutinized over that stuff, which I think it should be scrutinized. So I'm glad that he's coming back, though. He did play well. He's one of those guys for me that I'm not quite sure. Like sometimes I watch him throw, and it looks so labored to me, and it just looks like it's uncomfortable, And
it's because he's left-handed. Why is it that left-handed baseball players, their swing looks so beautiful, but left-handed quarterbacks have sort of a jerky notion?
I don't know.
They're not as fluid looking.
Yeah, maybe it's just because we're not used to it, right? But it looks like he's throwing a little, 8-yard slant or 6-yard slant. It just looks like he's got to go, his whole body has to get into it, to get it there.
Right.
It just,
but he's effective.
Yeah, no,
is he effective, or was that all right? So I brought up how he was playing before the concussions. Mm-hmm. Is his style? Is he the kind of quarterback that you think is built to last, that you can win with for a long time, compared to the other top quarterbacks in the AFC?
Well, I would tell you that I have, I'm probably a little bit different than the way a lot of people think about the quarterback position in general, because I'm a big believer in systems and being able to run the ball and being able to set up your play action and marry your run game to your play action game, marry your run game to your play pass game, So I know Mike McDaniel. I know he does that really well, and I know that offense and that system. So I believe in that offensive philosophy. You can take a quarterback like a Tua, who probably is not a Burrow, or probably is not a Herbert, or probably is not a Jalen Hurts, or probably is not a one of those guys, and you could still be very effective. Very effective. So yeah, I'm fascinated because there are times I watch him, and I have not done a Miami game since he's been the quarterback. So I haven't done a in-depth deep dive into the Miami Dolphins offense. But I've watched enough of their offense to go, I'm not sure, I'm not.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, he still clearly has a lot to prove. Mike McDaniel has a lot to prove. Dolphins have a lot to prove, and that division's only going to get tougher once Aaron Rodgers lands in it, likely. But, as you were talking about how you do it all over again, despite the pain, the injuries, the sacrifice, you do it all over again.
Sure.
And I think that maybe right there, your answer probably helps explain a lot why Damar Hamlin made the announcement this week that he's coming back.
I think that's
because a lot of us would be like, dude, you died.
All right.
for a time on the football field, and you want to go back.
Yeah. I think
some balls, man.
Yeah, there's no question. There's no question. And I think, some of it's probably unfinished business. Some of it is like it's such a freak show thing to have that traumatic impact right at that perfect moment when your heart's between beats or whatever, and to shut down your heart. And it's happened in other sports, right? It's happened. Yep. It happens in car accidents and other things that that do that to you. But I think there's a party that probably goes, the odds of that ever happening again are zero, right? I mean, that's not going to happen again. Right. But I think there's part of it is you've had this, like I said earlier, you've had this childhood dream for like your whole life, and now you're like, man, I just want to, I want to finish what I started, and like the unfinished business aspect of it. The other thing is, you don't get to that point without being uber competitive, and it's not just competing against your opponent. Oftentimes in life, your opponent is you. Mm-hmm. You're the biggest opponent in your life, and I don't know if you ever listened to any David Goggins stuff. David Goggins is just listen to, Google him and look him, he's just this no nonsense ex-military, in charge. And I love one of the things he always talks about is grabbing your inner bitch. Just grab your inner bitch and let it know that you're in charge.
I like that.
And I tell you what, I listened to something on he did a podcast with Joe Rogan, and I was listening to this piece, it was a clip that was put up, and listening to this, and I was just like, man, that's that, I love that. Grab your inner bitch. And since then I've been finishing my shower in a cold shower every day, for 3 to 5 minutes of just ice cold shower. And I constantly get
the whole time.
Eventually you get used to it. It's not that bad.
Yeah, but for the first 35 seconds of it,
the first it's just miserable, and I'm just always like that little bitch that comes out in me. I'm like, you're not, no, absolutely not, you little bitch. Yeah. Get back in there.
At
that
point, the little bitch wants to come out.
Oh, there ain't no question. There's no question. So yeah, I just love the whole concept, and there is this playing hurt for me there was a badge of honor to it. There was hey man, I ain't going to listen to my body. I'm not going to listen to to my knee that's barking, to whatever. I ain't. F you. I'm not going to listen. I'm going to go out here and do something that 99.99999% of the people in the world can't do.
Right.
And there was a badge of honor, and there was that competitiveness of me against me, that I'm going out here and I'm going to, I feel like shit, and I'm going to go out here and kick somebody's ass. And I love that competition, that internal competition with myself.
With your inner bitch.
With my inner bitch. Man, just grab her.
I love that.
Or him. Or it.
Yes.
Or they.
Yes.
Or whatever you have to use today.
Exactly. Grab it, though. Let's get a little lightning round stuff here.
Okay. Oh, I like it.
Trades. Rumored trades involving some pretty big name players. Let's start with San Francisco and the rumblings that they're looking to move Trey Lance. You've spent a lot of time around San Francisco the last couple of years. Where are you at? More importantly, where do the 49ers, how do they view Trey Lance?
Speculation, okay? I just would have to speculate. What they thought they drafted and what they actually drafted are two different things. One, not a lot of experience coming from a small school. And I'm a small school guy, so I believe in small school players. But you got to play. If you're a small school player, you better have played 35 games or 40 games, whatever it is, right? You can't play 16. because that competition, you just are better than everybody else. You know, you are Zoolander. We're better than you. Or is it Zoolander? No, Dodgeball. Sorry.
Global
I mixed
Gym.
up
Global
Global Gym. Right. I mixed up my Ben Stillers.
Easy to do.
Yes.
Throw
We're
a
better
little
than
meat-
you, and we know it.
Throw a little Meet the Fockers in there, and
Yeah,
it's
right.
easy to
Right.
get off the rails.
You can milk anything with nipples, Greg. So anyhow, yeah, I think they thought they were getting an athlete that resembled more the Lamar Jackson type of elusiveness, athleticism. And I've said this, man. Lamar makes NFL players, the best athletes on the planet, oftentimes look like JV players.
Looks silly.
And what they didn't get is they didn't get the lateral quickness and elusiveness that Lamar had. They got straight line, but they didn't get that edge to edge presence. So when you watch, and I've talked to them about this, when they ran him, look at the injury. When they were running him, he wasn't outside the edges like Lamar on quarterback counters and, you know, options and all that crap. They were downhill, QB power, inside type of runs because he doesn't have that outside burst that Lamar has.
So he needs to go to what? Like a developing team that just he'd be in a position where he'd just go play.
Yeah, but I think the point is that he doesn't have that type of athleticism they thought he was going to have, and he doesn't have any. He doesn't have the pocket presence because he just didn't play.
But can that be? Is it just a matter of playing, or at this point has he been out so long?
No, I don't.
It'll be tough to gain that.
I think San Francisco. Okay, here's would be my guess is we found a guy who's got unbelievable pocket presence, who can really play, who is unflappable. Now he got injured, but we have a championship roster and a developmental player in Trey Lance. And so let's recoup whatever we can recoup. And you're not going to.
No, you gave up 3 number ones. You're not even going to get a 1 for him.
You get a second rounder and feel good about it.
Maybe.
I think that's where they are right now. So I think that's ultimately where Trey Lance is going to be.
A couple other names.
Yeah.
Budda Baker with Arizona.
Phenomenal player.
And Devon White with Tampa.
Phenomenal player. And I don't know why both of those guys are disgruntled. We always joked around back in my day with Mike Greenberg on ESPN. You want gruntled players, not disgruntled players.
Yes.
Want a guy to be gruntled. Yep. Neither of those guys seem to be gruntled right now.
Out there, you want to work with people who are gruntled?
Yeah, you want gruntled people.
Yes.
Okay, so Devon White's a freak show. Like he's a freak show blitz guy. He's a freak show coverage guy. He's just a freak show athlete, and he's a great football player. And he's a guy to me. Talking to NFL coaches, and they'll tell you this, especially from the linebacker position. You got to have at least one dude that can affect the game. Let's call it in a 15-yard area, in a 15-yard rectangle. So that dude can cheat. You can cheat your drops. You can cheat your coverage, meaning that, like, if you're a hook defender, you want to be 8 to 10 yards deep, and you want to be 2 yards outside the hash. That's where your hook is, right? That's where your hook zone is. And when I get a dude that can move like Devon White, I can go from 8 to 10, 10 to 12, 12 to 14, and I can go 2 yards to 3 yards to 4 yards. Now all of a sudden, I can't throw the curl. I can't throw the basic. I can't throw the in-cutting routes because that guy's sitting there. So then I come back and dump it off to the arrow route or to the drive, the shallow cross, and all of a sudden he just triggers and goes, yeah! And you think you got 7 yards and you got 2.5, right? And you're like, son of a bitch. Like, we're behind the chains.
Yeah.
Like, you got to have one of those dudes.
Yeah.
And he is one of those dudes. And as far as Budda Baker is concerned, That dude is a football playing Jesse. That dude, he great guy, great player, and he's one of those rare birds. One, if you watch him on film, and not that anybody watched a lot of Arizona film, but I've had several Arizona games over the last several years. Blatant disregard for his own well-being. Like that dude is like he don't feel pain. Like he does not he gives zero shits about his own well-being. He flies around and tries to murder people. It's unbelievable. And nicest kid in the world, but has blatant disregard for his own well-being. And then versatility. He's always in the box, but he can play deep safety. He could play strong or free, okay? He can play nickel or dime, and he can play corner. And he's got man-to-man cover skills. He's got zone awareness and just spatial awareness. He's got the ability to play the run. He's a big-time run defender. And he'll take on a 330-pound guard and not even think about it. He just doesn't care. He's one of my favorite players to watch, I'll be honest with you. And I'll tell you what, I mean, if he wants to trade, if I was in the market to upgrade my defense, dude, I'd figure out a way to make that trade work.
High praise. High praise indeed. Well, we got the draft a week from now.
Yeah.
In the meantime, everybody, go grab your inner bitch.
That's right. Choke the shit out of that thing. Hey, for everybody involved in the Stinkin Truth podcast, we appreciate you guys. We'll be back with you later on next week.